Positive Lens Podcast. I'm your host, Scott T. Each week, we will bring you positive law enforcement news stories from across the globe, shared by departments and citizens like yourself. In our Getting to Know Your Local Leo segment, we will speak with a member of the law enforcement community about everyday life and most things non-law enforcement, as we hope to adjust your focus so you see that members of your local law enforcement community are not much different than you and me. Hey guys, welcome to episode 16. It's your neighbor, not Amazon. In this episode, we will be sharing 3 truly wonderful, amazing stories as we learn about a neighbor's dire situation when we suspected Amazon at the door, 9 minutes that saved a life, and how an officer lit up the faces of children with his generosity. Let's get started. How many times has your doorbell rang and you figured it was the Amazon package you ordered just a few days ago? Or how about hearing the doorbell ring, but you didn't want to take the time to see who it was, as you were not expecting anyone and had no interest in talking to a salesman? I think it's reasonable to think we've all done this on 1 or 2 occasions, if not more. Thankfully, this was not entirely the case on November 16, 2024, when off-duty technical trooper Chad Crittenden of the Kansas Highway Patrol heard his doorbell ring. While he did initially think it was Amazon delivering a package, what he saw was much more alarming. As per the Kansas Highway Patrol, he saw, I quote, his neighbor, Mrs. Penner, shaking on the front porch. She told him her husband collapsed in the backyard and asked if he had an AED. When Technical Trooper Crittenden arrived in the backyard, he noticed that Mr. Penner was not breathing, and he immediately started performing CPR. Prior to EMS arrival, Technical Trooper Crittenden performed 3 to 4 rounds of CPR and continued after EMS arrived. EMS and Trooper Crittenden performed multiple rounds of CPR and utilized an AED multiple times prior to Mr. Penner being transported to a local hospital. Because of Technical Trooper Crittenden's willingness to react without hesitation and perform life-saving measures, Mr. Penner survived and has returned home. End quote. People always talk about being good neighbors, but this may be one of the best neighbor experiences one could ask for. For his actions, the Kansas Highway Patrol presented Technical Trooper Crittenden with a life-saving award. Congratulations and thank you, Technical Trooper Chad Crittenden. This is an outstanding story, and all of us can only hope to have a neighbor like you should we ever face such a dire situation. Your ability to react without hesitation and perform at the highest level to save your neighbor is a testament to you and your training. Thank you again, Technical Trooper Chad Crittenden and the Kansas Highway Patrol. This next story is going to test my skills of accurate pronunciation, so I apologize in advance if I butcher the name, so we'll see how it goes. As we spoke of in a previous episode, a parent is never truly fully prepared for the worst when it comes to their children, as we never want to envision those thoughts. I believe this story is incredibly remarkable and was actually shared by Sheriff Eric Kirsch of the Waubonsee County Sheriff's Office about the work of a captain at the City of St. Mary's Police and Fire Department. In his own words, I quote, "There goes my hero. She's ordinary. On the 29th of January 2025, my pal Captain Lisa Davis here of the City of St. Mary's Police and Fire Department and John Casaletta responded to a medical call of an 11-week-old infant in respiratory distress. The baby girl stopped breathing. Captain Davis arrived and performed CPR on the infant for almost 9 minutes. The baby was rushed to hospital by EMS and lived. There goes my hero. She's ordinary." End quote. There are many parts of this story that I could not fathom. 1, as a parent, and 2, as someone who learned of the story. A baby at 11 weeks is so weak, yet strong. So vulnerable, but resilient. And in baby Amy's case, a survivor. I spoke with several nurses after learning of the story about the challenges of performing CPR for 9 minutes on an 11-week-old. to summarize their answers into 2 points. To perform CPR for 9 minutes is very difficult on you physically, regardless if an 11-week-old or an adult. However, adding to the case that you're performing CPR on an 11-week-old makes it even more difficult mentally. While you spend hours upon hours training for these such scenarios, that does not take the human element into full effect. In this case, when you are there and you are truly trying to save the life of a baby, you're in another mindset. And then the other piece of this is the level of concentration that is needed when taking care of an 11-week-old. Most CPR cases we learn of, find ourselves in, speak of, all involve adults. So it's very different per se when you're working with a baby. Thank you, Sheriff Kirsch, for sharing this beautiful story. Amazing work, Captain Lisa Davis and John Cancellata of the City of St. Mary's Police and Fire Department. The life-saving measures you took to keep baby Amy with us is nothing short of extraordinary. We hope to hear of you receiving recognition and a life-saving award for your successes. We know you are not police officers for the awards, but that does not mean that you're not worthy of such recognition. Thank you for all you do, and may God bless you. Now, let's shift gears to our final story. Did you ever remember trying to raise money for something when you were a kid? Maybe you went door to door selling candy bars, Girl Scout cookies, who doesn't love them, or had your parents bring the ordering forms to their work to try to boost your sales, or even set up a shop in your driveway trying to sell anything to someone who might buy what you're selling so you could buy your favorite G.I. Joe, Barbie, video game consoles, skateboard, whatever your young heart desired. This final story is best read as shared by the Fairfield, California Police Department. I quote, "On January 9th, around 4 p.m., Officer Whipple was driving near Harding and Utah Streets in Fairfield after resolving a call for service when he passed by a couple of kids on bicycles. As he drove past, one called out to him, 'Want some lemonade?' Officer Whipple thought. The weather is unreasonably warm. It would pair great with a glass of fresh squeezed lemonade. Making a quick decision, he turned his patrol car around and pulled up beside the kids. The group told him they had a lemonade stand set up in front of the house and eagerly led the way on their bicycles as he followed in his patrol car. About halfway down the block, they stopped in front of a home that had a small table set up in front of it, complete with pitcher and red cups. The kids were excited to have a real police officer patronize their lemonade stand and bragged that the Fairfield Fire Department had stopped by the day before. As they gathered around the stand, the kids pelted Officer Whipple questions about his uniform and equipment and happily talked about their own hopes and dreams for the future. Naturally, several wanted to be police officers. The kids poured a cup of fresh squeezed lemonade for Officer Whipple and shared him what they intended to purchase with their profits. They hadn't had much business yet, they said, but had high hopes. Officer Whipple reached into his pocket and retrieved his wallet, only to find the smallest bill he had was a 20. He forked it over, knowing it would make for some pretty excited kids, and that they'd put the extra money to good use. He was right, of course. Before leaving, Officer Whipple handed out stickers and thanked the kids for the lemonade. He left, reminiscing because, unbeknownst to the kids, he had a very similar experience as a child. He, too, was once visited by officers on patrol at his very own lemonade stand. Here's to paying it forward." End quote. We have since learned, since the story was released, that the children were trying to raise money for a new bicycle. While the $20 is not enough for the bicycle alone, the experience of spending time with Officer Whipple was one these children are likely never to forget. Who knows, as the children said, there may be a future officer in this group, and due to their experience and interaction with a real police officer, they might just be inspired more. Thank you, Officer Whipple, for your generosity and taking the time to invest in these children. You show them, by example, that a police officer is someone they can trust, talk to, learn from, and even have fun with. These unplanned and unscripted interactions with children can help us reshape the future, and the future that of respect of law enforcement in our communities, one day and one child at a time. Thank you again, Officer Whipple at the Fairfield, California Police Department. To all the officers and departments featured in today's episode, thank you. You are an example of superior law enforcement serving the citizens of your communities, regardless if you are off or on duty. Those you engage with are, without a doubt, better today because of the experience they had with you. Your impact is unmeasurable. The men and women in our law enforcement communities prepare and train to execute at the highest levels when called into action and serve with the highest degree of professionalism. These 3 stories are a testament to just that. If you liked this episode, follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Provide us your feedback in the comments and leave us a rating or review. We truly appreciate your opinion. And then follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook to get all the latest updates. Remember, you can always find places that will share negative law enforcement news stories. But here, at Your Positive Lens, you will only find your positive law enforcement news stories. Once again, I'm your host, Scott T. Thanks for listening, and we'll capture you on the next Your